If you can afford hospital bills, you can afford rent, my dad said, tapping the table like a judge's gavel. $200 a month. Or get out, my mom added, not even looking up from her phone. And don't try the guilt thing. We're done supporting you. The word supporting echoed in my head like a bad joke. The kitchen smelled like burned coffee and disinfectant wipes. Morning light came in through the blinds, cutting the room into thin stripes, like I was already standing behind bars. My medical bills were spread out in front of me, white envelopes, red ink, numbers that felt heavier than they looked. I hadn't slept. Pain still hummed low in my body, the kind doctors say is manageable when it doesn't belong to them. I remember thinking how quiet betrayal sounds. No screaming. Just conditions. Hi everyone, my name is Iris Whitlock. And this was the morning I learned that love in my family had a monthly price tag. I sat there longer than necessary, fingers resting on the edge of the table, grounding myself. I didn't cry. That surprised them. My dad leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, already satisfied. He thought this was leverage. He thought fear would keep me folded small. You've got until tonight, he said. Be realistic. Realistic. Like illness is optional. Like loyalty is a favor. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped the tile loud enough to make my mom glance up, annoyed. For a second I almost said something emotional. Almost explained. Almost begged them to see me. Instead I nodded. Hey, I said. That single word shifted the room. My dad frowned, confused. My mom blinked, like she'd missed a step in a dance she thought she was leading. I walked past them down the hallway I grew up in, the walls still holding old versions of me they no longer recognized. I packed quietly. Clothes first. Documents. Medication. The things that mattered. I paused in the living room, looking at the blinking router lights, the TV idling on a show I paid for, the phones charging on the counter. All connected to me in ways they never acknowledged. By nightfall my car was loaded. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't say goodbye. But as I pulled out of the driveway, something inside me settled. Cold, clear, deliberate. They thought I was leaving empty-handed. They had no idea what I was about to take with me. I sat in my car with the engine running, hands still on the steering wheel, watching the house through the windshield. The porch light flicked on behind me, automatic, thoughtless. Like everything else in that house. My phone buzzed. One bar of signal. Still mine. I opened the car door and stepped back out, keys jingling softly in the quiet. The night air felt sharp against my skin but clean. Honest. I went back inside without knocking. No one stopped me. They were already in the living room, settling into the couch, the TV glowing blue against their faces like a shrine. My dad didn't even turn around. Make sure you leave the keys, he said. I will, I answered. I walked straight to the modem. The little green lights blinked steadily, loyal. I unplugged it. Just like that. The room went silent except for the TV speakers stuttering, buffering, freezing. What are you doing? My mom snapped. I lifted the router, light as a lunchbox. This is mine. That's ridiculous, my dad said, standing now. Put it back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I pay for the internet. I pay for the streaming services. And the family phone plan. My mom's face tightened. You can't just. I can, I said, surprised at how calm I sounded. You told me to be realistic. I opened my phone. 1 app. 2 taps. The streaming subscriptions. Gone. Another tap. The family plan, scheduled for cancellation at midnight. I watched the confirmation screens appear, neat and final. You're being petty, my dad said. No, I said. I'm being accurate. I placed my house keys on the table. Metal against wood. Final punctuation. As I walked out, my phone buzzed again, this time with a service confirmation. Changes complete. Behind me the TV went black. In the darkness I smiled, not because I'd hurt them but because for the first time, everything I gave had stopped flowing one way. My phone rang before I reached the end of the street. I didn't answer. The second call came faster. Then a text. Then another. Iris, this isn't funny. Turn the Wi-Fi back on. We can talk about the rent. I drove with the window cracked, cold air cutting through the tightness in my chest. Every mile put space between me and that kitchen table, but their voices still followed, thin and sharp, vibrating inside my head. At a red light I finally pulled over. I answered on the 4th call. What? I said. My dad didn't bother with greetings. You embarrassed us. Do you know how that looked? I almost laughed. Almost. You told me to leave, I said. I did. That doesn't mean you take things out of spite. Spite. I repeated. You charged your sick daughter rent. Silence. Then my mom's voice slid in, softer, more dangerous. You're being dramatic. Everyone has bills. Yes, I said. Including me. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror, eyes hollow, jaw set. I barely recognized the woman looking back, but she looked steadier than the one who sat at that table hours ago. You can come back, my dad said. We'll revisit the amount. That word again. Amount. Like my worth had decimals. No, I said. What do you mean no? My mom snapped. I mean, I answered slowly, you made it clear what staying costs. And I finally checked my balance. Another pause. I imagined them standing there in the dark living room, phones in their hands, realizing how much of their comfort ran through me. You'll regret this, my dad said. I ended the call before he could finish the sentence. As I pulled back onto the road, my phone buzzed one last time. Family plan canceled. The screen went quiet. So did my guilt. And in that silence, something dangerous grew. Clarity. I parked outside a cheap extended stay motel with a flickering sign and a vacancy light that hummed like it was tired of trying. I didn't go inside right away. I sat there, forehead resting against the steering wheel, listening to my own breathing, uneven but real. My phone lit up again. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Iris, my aunt said. Her voice carried that familiar mix of concern and performance. Your parents are upset. Your father says you humiliated them. I closed my eyes. Of course they'd called reinforcements. They always did. They kicked me out, I said. I left. Well, she replied carefully, they didn't mean it like that. Families say things. So do doctors, I said quietly. And bills. And pain. She sighed. You know how your dad is. Proud. Stressed. I pictured him standing in the dark living room, phone glowing in his hand, surrounded by the silence he used to outsource to me. Then he should be proud enough to pay his own way. There was the shift. I felt it even before she spoke again. The moment the story stopped being about me and started being about them losing something useful. You could at least bring the router back, she said. Your mother can't sleep without her shows. I laughed then. A short, sharp sound that surprised me. She slept fine when I was crying in the ER. The line went dead. I finally stepped out of the car. The motel room smelled like old carpet and lemon cleaner. It wasn't home. But it was quiet. I set my bag down, lined up my medication on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time all day no one was asking me for anything. Outside a truck passed. Somewhere a door slammed. Life kept moving. I checked my phone once more. No new messages. No apologies. Just absence. I lay back and stared at the ceiling, realizing something that settled deep and steady in my chest. They didn't miss me. They missed what I made easy. And I was done being convenient. Morning crept in through thin curtains, pale and uncertain. I woke to the sound of my own phone alarm, soft, unobtrusive. No one yelling my name. No passive-aggressive sighs from the kitchen. Just me. For a moment I didn't move. My body ached in familiar places, the reminder that I hadn't imagined any of this. That I hadn't overreacted. Pain has a way of anchoring truth. I sat up and checked my phone. 6 missed calls. 3 voicemails. All from my parents. I didn't listen yet. Instead I opened my banking app. The numbers weren't comforting but they were honest. I calculated what I could afford if I stayed careful. What I could manage if I stopped paying for everyone else's convenience. The math was tight but it worked. That realization hit harder than any threat they'd thrown at me. I showered in water that took too long to warm, wrapped myself in a towel that smelled faintly of bleach and looked at myself in the mirror. My face looked thinner. Older. But there was something new there too, an edge of resolve I'd never allowed myself before. I pressed play on the first voicemail. My dad's voice filled the room, brittle with irritation. You're being unreasonable. Your mother's phone isn't working. Fix it. No, are you okay? No, where are you staying? Just fix it. The second message was my mom, sharper. This is hurting the family. I deleted both. The third voicemail was quieter. Almost careful. "Call us," my dad said. "We need to talk." I sat on the edge of the bed again, phone heavy in my hand. They didn't need to talk. They needed control back. And for the first time I understood something with startling clarity. Distance wasn't punishment. It was protection. I set my phone down untouched and let the silence finish what it had started. By afternoon the silence cracked. A notification slid across my screen. "Mom has shared her location with you." I hadn't asked for it. She'd done that thing she always did when words stopped working. Tried to pull me back into the web by pretending concern. Another text followed. "We're worried. This isn't you." I stared at the message until the words blurred. "This isn't you" was their favorite way of saying we don't recognize you when you don't comply. I typed. Deleted. Typed again. "This is me" without pressure. I finally sent. 3 dots appeared instantly. Disappeared. Reappeared. Then my dad called. I answered this time, not because I owed him but because I wanted to hear it clearly. The shift. The desperation. "You've made your point," he said, voice tight. "Bring the router back. We'll forget the rent thing." Forget. Like it was a typo. Like it hadn't sliced something open. "You didn't forget my hospital bills," I said. A breath. Heavy. Calculated. "You're overreacting." There it was. The final card. "I'm reacting exactly once," I replied. Every other time I stayed quiet. My chest felt hollow but steady, like a room after furniture's been cleared out. "We raised you," my mom said suddenly, her voice cutting in. "You owe us respect." I looked around the motel room. The bare walls, the cheap lamp, the bag that held everything I own now. "I paid you back," I said. "Monthly." I ended the call before they could reshape the past again. When the phone went dark I felt it, the last thread snapping. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just clean. And for the first time I knew they couldn't pull me home anymore. Because home had finally stopped hurting me. That evening I walked to the small grocery store across the street. The automatic doors sighed open and the smell of bread and floor cleaner wrapped around me. Ordinary. Grounding. I moved slowly down the aisles, choosing things I liked. Not what stretched farthest, not what everyone else preferred. Soup I could actually eat. Tea that calmed my stomach. One small luxury chocolate I almost put back then didn't. At the checkout my card went through on the first try. I stood there longer than necessary, receipt warm in my hand, feeling something loosen in my chest. It wasn't joy. It was permission. Outside my phone buzzed again. A message from my dad, this time stripped of anger, replaced with urgency. "We had to reset everything. The TV won't connect. Your mom's phone line is suspended. Call us." I imagined them pacing the house, pressing buttons that no longer worked, realizing how much of their normal had quietly depended on me showing up, paying up, smoothing things over. I typed one last message. "I'm not responsible for managing your comfort anymore." I didn't add explanations. I didn't soften it. A minute later my mom replied. "So you're really choosing this over family?" I stopped walking. Streetlight above me buzzed softly, insects flickering in and out of the glow. "I'm choosing myself," I wrote. "You made that necessary." No reply came after that. I walked back to the motel under a sky that felt wider than it ever had before. Inside my room I set the groceries away, turned on a lamp and sat on the bed. For years I thought strength looked like endurance. But now I knew the truth. Sometimes strength looks like leaving quietly and letting the silence do the explaining. I checked out the next morning. Not dramatically. No farewell glances. Just a key slid across the counter and a nod to a clerk who didn't know me and didn't need to. I drove to a small apartment I'd found online at 2 in the morning. It wasn't perfect. The paint was uneven, the windows old. But when I stepped inside the air felt neutral. Untouched by expectations. Untitled by anyone else's rules. I sat on the bare floor with my back against the wall and let myself feel it. Not triumph, not anger. Relief. My phone stayed quiet. No calls. No texts. No sudden apologies wrapped in conditions. They had solved their problems the way they always did, by adjusting, not reflecting. And that was the justice. They learned they couldn't scare me into paying anymore. They learned access to me came with boundaries. They learned love that charges rent isn't love, it's a transaction. Weeks later a letter arrived. No apology. Just an update. They'd switched providers. Started paying their own plans. Lapped it. I read it once and recycled it. Because I didn't need acknowledgement to validate what I'd done. I stood in my own kitchen that night. Mine, and brewed tea. The kettle whistled. The lights stayed on. The Wi-Fi worked. And no one could take it from me. I wasn't colder now. I was clearer.